In the year 563 BCE, in the lush gardens of Lumbini, nestled in the foothills of the Himalayas in present-day Nepal, a child was born who would change the spiritual history of the world. His name was Siddhartha Gautama. He would later become known as the Buddha, the Enlightened One. His mother was Queen Mahamaya, the beautiful and virtuous wife of King Suddhodana, the ruler of the Sakya clan. Their capital was Kapilavastu, a prosperous city in the foothills of the Himalayas. According to ancient tradition, Queen Mahamaya had a remarkable dream before Siddhartha's birth. She dreamed that a magnificent white elephant with 6 tusks entered her side. The dream was interpreted by the wise Brahmins as a sign that she would give birth to a child of extraordinary destiny. On the full moon night of May, Queen Mahamaya was traveling from Kapilavastu to her parents' home in Devadaha. She stopped to rest in the beautiful sal grove of Lumbini. As she reached up to grasp the branch of a flowering sal tree, the labor began. Standing upright, holding the branch, she gave birth to her son. Legend says that the newborn prince took 7 steps immediately after his birth. At each step, a lotus flower blossomed beneath his feet. He raised his hand to the sky and declared, "I am the chief of the world. I am the eldest in the world. This is my last birth. I shall never be born again." The heavens rejoiced. Gods and celestial beings are said to have descended to celebrate the birth. The earth shook gently, flowers rained down from the sky, and cool breezes swept through the grove. The naming ceremony. 5 days after his birth, the naming ceremony was held. The prince was given the name Siddhartha, which means he who achieves his purpose or one who has accomplished his goal. His family name was Gautama. 7 days after giving birth, Queen Mahamaya passed away. It was a devastating loss for the infant prince. His care was entrusted to his aunt and stepmother, Queen Mahapajapati Gautami, who loved him as her own son and raised him with tenderness and devotion. His father, King Suddhodana, was deeply attached to his son. He was determined to protect the boy from all suffering and to ensure that he would become a great earthly king, a Chakravartin, or a universal monarch, rather than a spiritual seeker. The prophecy that haunted the king. Soon after Siddhartha's birth, the king summoned 8 of the most learned Brahmins to read the infant's destiny. 7 of them raised 2 fingers, prophesying that the prince would either become a great king who would rule the entire world or a great spiritual leader who would renounce all worldly possessions and attain enlightenment. But one of them, the youngest Kondinya, raised only 1 finger. He declared with certainty, "The prince will not become a king. He will renounce the palace. He will leave his family. He will become the Buddha and save all beings from the cycle of birth and death." The king was deeply disturbed. He wanted his son to be a great king, not a wandering ascetic. He resolved to do everything in his power to prevent the prophecy from coming true. The prince in the palace. King Suddhodana built 3 luxurious palaces for his son, 1 for each season, warm and cozy for winter, cool and refreshing for summer, and pleasant for the rainy season. The prince was surrounded by every imaginable comfort. He was clothed in the finest silk. He was served the most delicious food. He was attended by beautiful dancers and musicians. The gardens were filled with lotus ponds, flowering trees, and singing birds. The king ensured that Siddhartha never saw anything ugly, unpleasant, or distressing. Siddhartha was trained in the arts of warrior kings. He excelled in archery, swordsmanship, horsemanship, and chariot racing. He was also trained in philosophy, literature, and governance. He was handsome, intelligent, and immensely strong, a perfect prince admired by all. As the prince grew into a young man, the king arranged his marriage to Princess Yasodhara, a beautiful and virtuous cousin. They were married in a grand ceremony. The couple lived in the palace, surrounded by luxury and entertainment. Yasodhara bore him a son, whom they named Rahula, which means fetter or chain, a name that would later carry deep significance, as the prince would eventually break all fetters. The Prince and the Prince, the story of Devdatta. One story from Siddhartha's childhood illustrates his extraordinary strength and compassion. His cousin, Devdatta, was arrogant and cruel. One day, Devdatta shot a swan with his bow and arrow. The bird fell wounded into the palace garden. Siddhartha, who was playing nearby, rushed to the bird's aid. He gently lifted the wounded swan and began to tend to its injuries. Devdatta arrived angrily and demanded, "Give me my bird. I shot it. It belongs to me." Siddhartha refused. "No, the bird is mine. I saved its life." The two cousins argued, and their disagreement was brought before the royal council. The wise ministers debated, who rightfully owns the swan, the one who shot it, or the one who saved it? The council decided in favor of Siddhartha. They declared, "He who saves a life owns it more than he who seeks to take it." Siddhartha nursed the bird back to health, then released it into the sky. As the swan flew away, Siddhartha smiled, a small act of compassion that foreshadowed his future. The Prince and the Farmer. Another story from his youth reveals Siddhartha's deep sensitivity to suffering. One day, while accompanying his father to a plowing ceremony, Siddhartha sat under a rose apple tree while the royal rituals were performed. As he watched the farmer plowing the fields, he noticed something that disturbed him deeply. The plow was cutting deep furrows into the earth. Worms were being uprooted and exposed. The birds swooped down to eat the worms. He saw the suffering of the farmer, the worms, and the birds, the endless cycle of pain and violence in nature. Young Siddhartha asked his father, "Why does the farmer hurt the worms? Why do the birds eat them? Why is there so much suffering in the world?" His father tried to dismiss the question, but Siddhartha could not forget what he had seen. He sat under the tree, deep in thought. His mind entered a state of profound concentration, the first meditation of his life. The shadows of the other trees moved as the sun shifted, but the shadow of the rose apple tree remained fixed over the prince, as if nature itself was sheltering him. The king was amazed when he found his son sitting in deep meditation. He bowed to the boy, recognizing that this was a sign of something extraordinary. The 3 palaces and the sealed gates. As Siddhartha grew older, King Suddhodana became increasingly anxious. He did everything possible to keep his son happy and distracted. He built the 3 palaces, sumptuous residences filled with beautiful women, music, dance, and entertainment. The prince was not allowed to see old age, sickness, death, or any form of human suffering. The gates of the palaces were sealed. The servants were ordered to remove anyone who was old, sick, or dying from the prince's path. The king's strategy worked for a while. Siddhartha was happy. He enjoyed the pleasures of palace life. He loved his wife and his son. He had no reason to question the world he lived in. But the seeds of doubt had been planted. The memory of the suffering farmer, the wounded swan, the shadows that did not move. These experiences lingered in his heart. The turning point. As Siddhartha approached his 29th year, the king's carefully constructed walls began to crack. One day, the prince decided to visit the city beyond the palace gates. His charioteer, Channa, drove him through the streets. The king had ordered that all the old, sick, and dying be removed from the prince's path. But fate had other plans. The prince saw an old man, bent, wrinkled, toothless, leaning on a staff. He asked Channa, "What is that man? Why is his hair white? Why is his back bent?" Channa replied, "That is old age, my prince. All beings grow old. It is the nature of life." Siddhartha was stunned. He asked, "Will I also grow old?" Channa nodded. Siddhartha fell silent. On another day, the prince saw a sick man, pale, groaning, covered in sweat, unable to move. He asked, "What is that man?" Channa replied, "That is sickness, my prince. All beings fall ill. It is the nature of life." Siddhartha asked, "Will I also fall sick?" Channa nodded. Siddhartha fell silent again. On a third journey, the prince saw a dead man, cold, still, being carried to the cremation ground. He asked, "What is that man?" Channa replied, "That is death, my prince. All beings die. It is the nature of life." Siddhartha was deeply shaken. He had lived his whole life insulated from these truths. Now they were staring him in the face. He asked, "Will I also die?" Channa nodded. Siddhartha realized with crushing clarity, no palace, no wealth, no pleasure could protect him from old age, sickness, and death. The Great Departure. On the fourth journey, Siddhartha saw a wandering ascetic, a man with shaven head and simple robes, walking with peaceful, calm eyes. He asked Channa, "Who is that man?" Channa replied, "He is a renunciant, my prince. He has left behind the world, seeking freedom from suffering." Siddhartha felt a strange relief. Perhaps there was a way out. Perhaps one could find peace beyond the suffering of the world. That night, Siddhartha resolved to leave the palace forever. He looked one last time at his sleeping wife, Yasodhara, and his infant son, Rahula. He touched them gently, a silent farewell. Then he walked to the stable, mounted his white horse Kanthaka, and rode out of the palace gates. At the age of 29, Siddhartha Gautama left behind his wealth, his family, and his kingdom. He cut his long hair, removed his royal garments, put on a simple robe, and became an ascetic, seeking the truth that would free all beings from suffering. His journey to enlightenment had begun. Conclusion. The childhood of Gautama Buddha was a paradox, a prince surrounded by every luxury, yet destined to realize that all luxury is fleeting. He grew up protected from suffering, yet his compassionate nature could not ignore it. He was trained to be a king, yet he chose the path of a beggar. His childhood story is not just about a prince who left his palace. It is about anyone who has ever questioned the meaning of life. It is about the search for truth that lies beyond the pleasures and comforts of the world. The Buddha's childhood reminds us that compassion begins with awareness of the suffering of others. True happiness is not found in material possessions. Suffering is universal. No one is exempt from old age, sickness, and death. This search for meaning is the most important journey of all. The boy who wept for a wounded swan, who meditated under a rose apple tree, who was disturbed by the suffering of the farmer and the worms. That boy would grow up to become the enlightened one who taught the world the path to freedom. I'm not the first Buddha to come upon earth, nor will I be the last. But I have been born to show the path to those who have lost their way. At the age of 29, Prince Siddhartha Gautama made a decision that would change the world forever. He left his palace, his wealth, his loving wife Yasodhara, and his infant son Rahula. He cut his long black hair, removed his royal garments, put on a simple yellow robe, and became a wandering ascetic. He had seen the four signs: an old man, a sick man, a dead man, and a peaceful ascetic. He had understood that suffering was universal. Now he was determined to find a way out of suffering, not just for himself, but for all beings. He walked into the forest and never looked back. The search for truth, 6 years of struggle. Siddhartha sought out the greatest teachers of his time. He studied with Alara Kalama, who taught him to reach the sphere of nothingness. But even that state of deep meditation did not give him liberation. He studied with Adaka Ramaputta, who taught him to reach the sphere of neither perception nor non-perception. Again, it was not enough. These states were temporary. They did not end suffering permanently. Siddhartha realized that meditation alone was not the answer. He needed to go deeper. He then joined a group of 5 ascetics who practiced extreme self-mortification. They believed that by torturing the body, they could purify the soul. Siddhartha joined them and pushed his body to the absolute limits. For 6 long years, he practiced the harshest austerities. He ate only 1 grain of rice per day, ate only 1 sesame seed per day. He slept on thorns. He sat in the scorching sun. He held his breath for long periods. He starved himself until his ribs were visible through his skin. He became so emaciated that his spine stuck out like a row of beads. His eyes sank deep into their sockets. His skin turned pale and yellow. His hair fell out. He resembled a living skeleton. One day, while meditating in this state, he collapsed. He had pushed his body to the very edge of death. The turning point, the middle way. As he lay on the ground, barely conscious, Siddhartha had a realization. When I was a young prince, sitting under the rose apple tree, I entered a state of deep meditation, joyful, peaceful, and alert. That was the path to enlightenment. Why am I afraid of that joy? Why am I torturing my body when the mind is what needs liberation? He understood that neither extreme, indulgence in pleasure, nor severe asceticism, was the answer. He had discovered the middle way, a balanced path between the two extremes. He accepted a bowl of rice milk from a young village girl named Suja, who had mistaken him for a forest spirit. He ate the meal, regaining his strength. The 5 ascetics who had been his companions were disgusted. They believed he had given up. They left him, walking away in disappointment. Siddhartha was now utterly alone, but he was also free. The great decision, I will not leave this seat. With his body nourished and his mind clear, Siddhartha walked to the banks of the Naranjana River. He bathed in the cool waters. Then he walked to a grove of trees near the village of Bodh Gaya. There, he found a large, ancient peepal tree, later known as the Bodhi tree, or the tree of enlightenment. Its branches spread wide, casting a cool and peaceful shade. Siddhartha walked around the tree 3 times in reverence. Then he gathered a handful of grass from a grass cutter named Satya, spread it at the foot of the tree, and sat down cross-legged. He made a solemn vow. Let my skin, my sinews, and my bones wither away. Let my flesh and blood dry up. But I will not leave this seat until I have found the way to end suffering. Even if the heavens fall upon me, I will not move. I will attain enlightenment, or I will die in this very spot. He sat facing east, determined and unwavering. The attack of Mara, the dark night of the soul. As Siddhartha sat in deep meditation, the forces of evil gathered to stop him. Mara, the demon of illusion and death, saw that Siddhartha was on the verge of enlightenment. Mara was terrified. If Siddhartha succeeded, he would break free from the cycle of birth and death, and Mara would lose his power over him. Mara attacked with all his might. He sent his 3 beautiful daughters, Tanha, desire, Arati, discontent, and Raga, lust, to seduce Siddhartha. They danced before him, offering every pleasure of the senses. Siddhartha remained completely unmoved. His mind was pure. He saw them not as beautiful women, but as illusions, empty and fleeting. Mara then sent armies of demons. Thousands of terrifying beings appeared, some with animal heads, some with multiple arms, some breathing fire, some screaming with rage. They threw weapons at Siddhartha, arrows, spears, flaming rocks, and thunderbolts. But Siddhartha did not move. He did not run. He did not fight back. He remained in perfect stillness. As the weapons came toward him, they were transformed into flowers. The arrows turned into petals. The spears became rainbows. The flames became cool breezes. The demon's rage was neutralized by his boundless compassion. Mara was furious. He sat on his elephant and shouted, "By what authority do you sit on this seat? You are alone. Who will bear witness to your worthiness?" Siddhartha reached out his right hand and touched the earth. The earth witness, gaining the power. And then something miraculous happened. The earth itself responded. The ground trembled. The trees shook. A voice emerged from the earth, deep, powerful, and unshakable. I am the earth. I bear witness to your countless lifetimes of virtue. I have witnessed your generosity, your compassion, your kindness, your courage. I am your witness. The earth quaked violently. Mara and his armies were thrown into chaos. They fled in all directions, screaming in terror. The darkness was shattered. Siddhartha had overcome the greatest obstacles: desire, fear, doubt, and death itself. The first watch, knowledge of past lives. In the first watch of the night, Siddhartha's mind became clear, calm, and concentrated. He entered a deep state of meditation called one-pointedness of mind. And then he saw his past lives, not just 1 or 2, but countless lifetimes. He saw himself as a king, a beggar, an animal, a god, a demon. He saw himself born, living, dying, and being reborn over and over again, an endless cycle without beginning or end. He saw how his actions in each life shaped his destiny, how good deeds brought happiness, and how harmful deeds brought suffering. He understood the law of karma, the universal law of cause and effect. He saw the tragedy of it all. Beings caught in an endless cycle, driven by desire, ignorance, and attachment. He saw that death was not the end, but merely a passage to yet another life of suffering and struggle. But he did not despair. He understood that the cycle could be broken. The second watch, knowledge of samsara. In the second watch of the night, Siddhartha's insight deepened. He saw the entire universe, all beings in all realms of existence. He saw gods in their heavenly palaces, humans struggling in their daily lives, animals driven by instinct, hungry ghosts tormented by endless craving, and beings suffering in the hell realms. He saw that every being, no matter how high or low, was caught in the same cycle, samsara, the endless wheel of birth, death, and rebirth. He saw that all beings were driven by the same forces, greed, hatred, and ignorance. He saw that there was no ultimate refuge in any realm. Even the gods would eventually die and be reborn in lower states. The only way out was through wisdom. The third watch, knowledge of the Four Noble Truths. In the third and final watch of the night, Siddhartha's mind became completely purified. All ignorance was removed. All darkness was dispelled. He attained the highest wisdom. He understood the Four Noble Truths. There is suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Sickness is suffering. Death is suffering. Separation from what we love is suffering. Not getting what we want is suffering. The five aggregates of attachment are suffering. There's a cause of suffering. The cause of suffering is craving. Craving for pleasure, craving for existence, craving for non-existence. It is attachment and desire that keep us trapped in the cycle of suffering. There's an end to suffering. Suffering can be ended. It is possible to completely overcome craving and attachment. It is possible to attain nirvana, the ultimate liberation, the state of perfect peace and freedom. There's a path to the end of suffering. The path is the Eightfold Path. Right understanding, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. The enlightenment, the supreme power gained. As the morning star rose in the eastern sky, Siddhartha Gautama attained supreme enlightenment. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. He had broken through all illusions. He had destroyed all defilements. He had overcome desire, hatred, and ignorance. He had attained unshakable liberation. He had gained the supreme power, not the power of armies, wealth, or magic, but the power of wisdom, compassion, and perfect freedom. He knew that he would never be born again. The cycle of samsara was broken. He had gone beyond all suffering. The Buddha remained seated under the Bodhi tree for 7 more days, experiencing the profound peace of his liberation. He did not need to eat or drink. The joy of enlightenment was nourishment enough. The Buddha's revelation, a new power to save the world. For the first 7 days after his enlightenment, the Buddha hesitated. He looked at the world and saw its suffering. He looked at his own mind and saw the profound depths of his awakening. He thought, "This truth I have discovered is so deep, so subtle, so difficult to see. It is beyond the grasp of the ordinary mind. If I try to teach it, people will not understand. They will be confused. It is better for me to remain in silence." But then, a divine being appeared before him, Brahmasampati, the Lord of the Brahma realm. He bowed deeply to the Buddha and pleaded, "Lord, there are beings with little dust in their eyes who will understand. They're trapped in suffering. They need a guide. Please, for the sake of the world, teach the Dharma. Show them the path. Be compassionate. Open the door to the deathless." The Buddha opened his compassionate eyes and looked upon the world with infinite love. He saw beings with potential, beings who could be freed from suffering. He made the decision, "I will teach. I will open the door of the deathless. Those with ears to hear will understand." The first sermon, setting the wheel in motion. The Buddha walked to Sarnath, a deer park near Varanasi. There, he met the 5 ascetics who had abandoned him, Kandana, Vappa, Badiya, Mahanama, and Asaji. They saw him approaching. They whispered to each other, "Here comes the ascetic Gautama." He gave up the struggle. He indulged in luxury. We will not bow to him. We will not honor him. But as the Buddha approached, his radiance was overwhelming. His eyes shone with infinite compassion. His face was serene and luminous. The five ascetics could not help but bow. They asked, "Friend, what has happened to you? You look so different." The Buddha replied, "Do not call me friend. I am the Tathagata, the one who has gone beyond. I have attained the deathless. I have understood the truth. I will teach you. Listen, and you will also attain liberation." He gave his first sermon, the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, or the turning of the wheel of Dharma. He taught them the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Kandana, the youngest of the five, was the first to understand. He attained the first stage of enlightenment, the stream entry. He became the first of the Buddha's disciples. The Buddha's supreme power, the power of wisdom and compassion, had begun to spread. The spread of the Dharma, a power that never diminishes. For the next 45 years, the Buddha walked across northern India, teaching the Dharma to kings and beggars, Brahmins and outcasts, men and women, young and old. He performed miracles, but he always said, "These are not the miracles that matter. The greatest miracle is the miracle of transformation, changing a suffering being into a liberated being." His power did not come from magic. It came from love, wisdom, and compassion. It came from teaching people to free themselves. It came from showing them the path to their own enlightenment. The Buddha founded a Sangha, a community of monks and nuns. It grew to include thousands of followers. The Dharma spread to every corner of India and, eventually, to the entire world. The Parinirvana, the final power. At the age of 80, the Buddha knew that his time in the world was coming to an end. He lay down on his right side, between two sal trees in the town of Kusinara. His disciples gathered around him, weeping. The Buddha smiled gently and said, "Do not weep. Everything that arises will pass away. This is the nature of all conditioned things. Do not think that I am gone. The Dharma I have taught will be your guide. Be your own light. Be your own refuge." His final words were, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive with diligence." With these words, the Buddha entered Parinirvana, the final, unsurpassable peace. He was never born again. He had broken the cycle forever. But his power, the power of the Dharma, continued. It spread across Asia, then across the world. Millions of people have found peace, freedom, and liberation by following his path. At the age of 80, the Buddha knew his time in this world was coming to an end. For 45 years, he had walked across northern India, teaching the Dharma, guiding countless beings toward liberation. Now his physical body was worn out. He was traveling with his beloved disciple, Ananda, when he fell seriously ill at a place called Pava. A blacksmith named Kunda offered him a meal, and after eating it, the Buddha's condition worsened. Despite his suffering, he remained calm and composed. He told Ananda, "Do not blame Kunda. Of all the meals I have ever eaten, this one will be the most fruitful. It has brought me to my final journey." The Buddha continued his walk to Kusinara, a small town in the forest. There, between two beautiful sal trees, he asked Ananda to prepare a resting place. He lay down on his right side, with his head facing north, fully mindful and aware. His disciples gathered around him, weeping softly. The Buddha opened his eyes and smiled gently. He said, "Do not weep, Ananda. All things that arise must pass away. This is the nature of all conditioned things. Nothing lasts forever. Do not think that I am gone. The Dharma I have taught will be your guide. Be your own light. Be your own refuge." The Buddha then asked if anyone had any final questions. One by one, his disciples came forward and bowed. No one had any questions. They had understood. His final words were, "All conditioned things are subject to decay. Strive with diligence." With these words, the Buddha entered Parinirvana, the final, unsurpassable peace. He was never born again. The cycle of birth and death was broken forever. The sal trees, even though it was not their season, burst into bloom and showered flowers upon his body. The heavens rejoiced and mourned at the same time. His body was cremated with great honor. His relics were divided among 8 kingdoms and enshrined in stupas, where they became objects of veneration for centuries to come. The Buddha's physical presence had ended, but his teachings, the Dharma, continued to spread across the world. His wisdom, his compassion, and his path to liberation live on in the hearts of millions. All things are impermanent. Strive with diligence. Gautama Buddha,